The granite walls of Blackmere Castle stood sentinel against the grey horizon, their jagged silhouette cutting into the perpetual twilight that shrouded the northern moors. Within those ancient stones, Eliza Winters moved like a shadow herself, her thin frame barely disturbing the dust that gathered in forgotten corners. 6 months had passed since she had been sold to the castle's steward to pay her father's gambling debts. 6 months of scrubbing floors, emptying chamber pots, and sleeping on a straw pallet in the servants' quarters beneath the kitchens. The autumn wind howled through the corridors, carrying the scent of decaying leaves and damp earth. Eliza pulled her threadbare shawl tighter around her shoulders as she descended the narrow stone staircase to the wine cellar. Master Grimshaw, the steward, had ordered her to fetch a bottle of the estate's finest Burgundy for the monthly visit of the solicitor who managed the absent lord's affairs. "Mind you don't drop it, girl," Grimshaw had warned, his sallow face inches from hers, breath reeking of onions and stale ale. "That wine is worth more than you'd earn in 2 years, if you earned anything at all." Eliza's fingers tightened around the brass key as she reached the bottom of the stairs. The cellar door loomed before her, its ancient oak planks reinforced with iron bands that had long since begun to rust. The key turned with a reluctant groan, and she pushed the door open, wincing at the eerie creak that echoed through the subterranean chamber. The air within was surprisingly dry, preserved by some ancient engineering feat that kept the castle's foundations from the pervasive damp of the moors. Eliza lifted her oil lamp, its weak flame casting elongated shadows across the rows of dusty bottles and weathered casks. Master Grimshaw had been specific about which wine he required, the 1789 Burgundy stored in the easternmost rack. As she moved deeper into the cellar, Eliza noticed something peculiar. A faint trail disturbed the dust on the floor, leading toward the far corner where the oldest wines were kept. Someone had been here recently, which was odd. Grimshaw jealously guarded the cellar keys, allowing no one but himself access to the valuable stores. Curiosity piqued, Eliza followed the trail, her lamp held high. The path led to a small door she had never noticed before, partially concealed behind a stack of empty crates. It stood slightly ajar, a sliver of deeper darkness visible through the gap. Prudence told her to ignore it, to fetch the Burgundy and return upstairs before Grimshaw came looking for her. But 6 months of servitude had not entirely extinguished her spirit, and the prospect of a secret previously unknown to her was too tempting to resist. Eliza pushed the door wider, cringing at the soft scrape of wood against stone. Beyond lay another chamber, smaller than the wine cellar and dominated by what appeared to be a large stone sarcophagus. The room smelled of damp earth and something else, a coppery metallic scent that reminded her uncomfortably of blood. Her lamp revealed walls lined with strange symbols, faded with age but still discernible. They were unlike anything Eliza had ever seen, neither Latin nor Greek nor any language she recognized. As she stepped further into the chamber, her foot struck something that rolled across the floor with a glassy tinkle. Bending down, she discovered an empty crystal vial, its interior stained with dark residue. A soft moan from the sarcophagus froze her in place. "Who's there?" she whispered, her voice trembling despite her attempt at courage. No answer came, but she heard the unmistakable sound of labored breathing. Someone, or something, was inside the stone container. Heart pounding in her chest, Eliza approached the sarcophagus. Its lid had been pushed aside, revealing a hollow interior. As she raised her lamp, the light fell upon the face of a man. He appeared to be in his 30s, with aristocratic features, high cheekbones, a straight nose, and a strong jaw now covered in several days' growth of dark beard. His skin was unnaturally pale, almost translucent, with blue veins visible beneath the surface. His eyes were closed, his chest barely rising and falling with each shallow breath. He wore the remains of what must once have been fine clothing, a silk shirt, now torn and stained, and dark trousers. A velvet waistcoat hung open, revealing a wound in his side that seeped a dark, viscous fluid that looked black in the lamplight. Eliza stepped back, torn between flight and fascination. Who was this man? How had he come to be hidden in a secret chamber beneath Blackmere Castle? And why was he lying in what appeared to be a tomb? As if sensing her presence, the man's eyes fluttered open. They were the color of burnished gold, with vertical pupils like a cat's. Those inhuman eyes fixed on her with an intensity that stole her breath. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered, his voice a dry rasp. "You're injured," Eliza said, surprising herself with her calm. "I can fetch help." "No!" The force of his rejection sent him into a fit of coughing. When it subsided, he continued more softly. "No one must know I am here. They are still hunting me." "Who is hunting you?" A bitter smile twisted his bloodless lips. "Those who fear what they cannot understand." His golden eyes studied her face. "You're new. What is your name?" "Eliza Winters. I've been at Blackmere 6 months." She hesitated. "And you, sir? Who are you?" He closed his eyes briefly, as if the question pained him. "Once I was called Valerian Blackmere." The name struck Eliza like a physical blow. Blackmere. Like the castle. But the Lord of Blackmere has been abroad for decades. The estate is managed by solicitors and Master Grimshaw. "Is that what they say?" Another bitter smile. "How convenient for them." A chill ran down Eliza's spine. If this man was telling the truth, if he was indeed Lord Blackmere, then who were the men who collected the estate's revenue? And what did Grimshaw know of this deception? But those questions paled before the immediate reality of the injured man before her. Lord or impostor, he was grievously wounded and in need of care. "Your injury, my lord," she said, deciding to err on the side of courtesy. "May I examine it?" He regarded her warily, then gave a slight nod. Eliza set her lamp on the floor and leaned closer, carefully pulling aside the torn fabric of his shirt. The wound was like nothing she had ever seen, a jagged tear in his side that seemed to be slowly spreading, the flesh around it turning grey and lifeless. "What manner of weapon did this?" she whispered, more to herself than to him. "A silver blade," he replied, watching her face, "infused with holy water and herbs, toxic to my kind." "Your kind?" Eliza looked up, meeting those strange golden eyes. "You haven't guessed?" There was a hint of amusement in his voice now. "I thought the eyes might give it away, or perhaps the sarcophagus." Eliza's mind whirled with childhood tales and superstitions, stories whispered by the fire on winter nights. Creatures that fed on blood and could not walk in sunlight. Beings that lived for centuries but could be killed by silver and blessed objects. "Vampire," she breathed, the word falling from her lips before she could stop it. He inclined his head slightly, acknowledging the truth of it. Fear coiled in her belly, urging her to flee. Yet something held her in place, compassion, curiosity, or perhaps simply the compelling power of his gaze. "If you are truly Lord Blackmere," she said slowly, "then this castle is yours. Why are you hiding in your own cellar?" Pain flickered across his features. "Because those who hunt me have taken my home. They believe me destroyed, burned to ash in my manor house in London. It was a near thing. I escaped with these wounds and made my way here, to the sanctuary prepared by my ancestors centuries ago." He gestured weakly at the symbols on the walls. "Wards of protection. They hide my presence from those with the power to sense my kind. And the wound. Can it be healed?" Valerian's expression grew grave. "Not without blood. Pure blood. Freely given. The silver poison spreads through me, weakening me by the hour. Soon it will reach my heart." "Blood," Eliza repeated, understanding dawning. Her hand moved unconsciously to her throat. "I don't blame you for your fear," he said softly. "You should go. Forget you found me here. Return to your life above." But even as he spoke, Eliza knew she could not simply walk away. Whether his tale was true or false, the man was suffering. And if there was even a chance he was the rightful lord of Blackmere, then her duty was clear. "I cannot leave you to die," she said with quiet determination. Valerian studied her, confusion evident in his golden eyes. "Why would you help me? I'm a monster by any human reckoning." "I don't know what you are," Eliza replied honestly, "but I know what I am, and I cannot turn my back on suffering, even yours." She reached for a shard of broken glass from the vial on the floor, its edge gleaming in the lamplight. "Eliza." "No," Valerian protested, but his voice was weak, his strength clearly fading. With a swift motion she drew the sharp edge across her palm. Blood welled, bright crimson in the dim light. Valerian's eyes fixed on it, the vertical pupils dilating until they nearly eclipsed the gold. His nostrils flared, and she saw the tips of fangs extending past his upper lip. "Freely given," she said, offering her bleeding hand. For a moment he resisted, turning his face away. Then, with a sound that was half groan and half snarl, he took her hand in both of his. His skin was cool and dry, his grip surprisingly gentle despite the desperate hunger evident in his eyes. "This binds us," he warned, his voice a harsh whisper. "Blood freely given creates a bond that is not easily broken." Eliza met his gaze steadily. "I understand." His lips touched her palm, cool and soft against her skin. The initial sting gave way to an odd warmth that spread up her arm and throughout her body. Eliza gasped, unprepared for the intimacy of the sensation. It was as though tendrils of his consciousness brushed against hers, carrying impressions of age and solitude, pain and perseverance. When at last he released her hand, Valerian's appearance had already begun to change. His skin, though still pale, had lost its deathly translucence. The wound at his side no longer seeped, though it remained raw and angry. "Your blood is strong," he said, studying her with newfound interest. "There is old power in your lineage, though I doubt you knew it." Before Eliza could respond, the distant sound of a door opening echoed through the wine cellar. "Winters, where are you, girl? How long does it take to fetch one bottle of wine?" Master Grimshaw's voice carried through the open door, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps on the cellar stairs. Panic surged through Eliza. "I must go," she whispered urgently. "He cannot find me here." Valerian nodded. "Go, but return when you can. There is much I must tell you about this castle, about the danger that lurks within its walls." He caught her wrist as she turned to leave. "And Eliza, trust no one, especially not Grimshaw." She pulled free and hurried from the hidden chamber, closing the door carefully behind her. Her mind raced as she quickly located the burgundy Grimshaw had sent her for. The steward's footsteps grew louder as she moved toward the cellar entrance. Her bleeding palm pressed against her skirt to hide the evidence of what she had done. "There you are!" Grimshaw's bulky figure blocked the doorway, his small eyes narrowing suspiciously. "What took you so long?" "Forgive me, sir," Eliza said, lowering her gaze submissively. "I had trouble finding the specific vintage you requested." Grimshaw grunted, snatching the bottle from her hands. He examined the label, then gave a satisfied nod. "Very well. But don't dawdle so in the future. It makes me wonder what you're really up to down here." "Yes, sir. Of course, sir." As she followed him up the narrow stairs, Eliza felt the weight of her new secret pressing upon her. Behind, in the darkness beneath Blackmere Castle, a vampire lord recovered his strength on her blood. Before her stretched the uncertain future, one filled with deception, danger, and perhaps the chance to right an ancient wrong. And somewhere in the castle above, enemies watched and waited, unaware that their prey still lived, or that a simple servant girl now stood as his ally and protector. The solicitor would arrive by nightfall, and Eliza couldn't help but wonder just whose interests did he truly represent. The solicitor's carriage arrived precisely as dusk settled over the moors. Eliza watched from an upper window as the black, lacquered vehicle, pulled by two perfectly matched grey horses, wound its way up the gravel drive. Lamplight spilled from the castle's entrance hall as Master Grimshaw himself ventured out to greet their monthly visitor. From her vantage point, Eliza could see Mr. Hargrove emerge from the carriage, a thin, stooped man with spectacles that caught the light as he tilted his head upward to survey the castle's imposing facade. He clutched a leather portfolio to his chest with one hand while accepting Grimshaw's obsequious greeting with the other. "Eliza!" Mrs. Beck's sharp voice startled her. The head housekeeper stood in the corridor, grey hair pulled severely beneath her cap. "Stop your daydreaming. The fire in the study needs tending, and Mr. Hargrove will want tea served there in 15 minutes precisely." "Yes, Mrs. Beck," Eliza replied, instinctively hiding her wounded palm behind her skirt. "And what happened to your hand?" The housekeeper's eyes narrowed suspiciously. Eliza's mind raced. "I caught it on a nail in the wine cellar, ma'am. It's nothing serious." Mrs. Beck sniffed disapprovingly. "Clean it properly. We can't have you bleeding on the linens. And wear gloves when you serve the tea." "Yes, ma'am." As the housekeeper bustled away, Eliza released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Her palm throbbed dully beneath the makeshift bandage she'd fashioned from a scrap of linen. The cut wasn't deep, but whenever she thought of Valerian's lips pressed against it, a strange warmth spread through her body. "Focus," she chided herself. She had work to do, and the study fire wouldn't stoke itself. The study was one of Blackmere's handsomest rooms, panelled in dark oak with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a massive stone fireplace. Portraits of stern-faced ancestors, Valerian's ancestors, she now realized, gazed down from the walls. As she knelt to build up the fire, Eliza found herself searching their painted features for some resemblance to the man in the hidden chamber. Her eyes lingered on one portrait in particular. It hung above the mantel, depicting a man in his prime, dressed in the fashion of perhaps 40 years ago. Though his eyes were a human blue rather than inhuman gold, the resemblance was unmistakable. The same aristocratic features, the same stern yet somehow vulnerable set to his mouth. "Admiring the 5th Baron Blackmere." Mr. Hargrove's reedy voice made her start. Eliza rose hastily, curtsying. "I beg your pardon, sir. I was just finishing with the fire." The solicitor regarded her curiously, head tilted like a curious bird. "You're new. I don't recall seeing you during my previous visits." "Eliza Winters, sir. I've been at Blackmere 6 months now." "Ah, yes, the debtor's daughter." He nodded, setting his portfolio on the massive desk. "Grimshaw mentioned the arrangement with your father. Most unfortunate." Shame burned in Eliza's cheeks, but curiosity overwhelmed her embarrassment. "That portrait, sir, is it truly the former Lord Blackmere?" Hargrove glanced up at the painting. "Indeed, Valerian Blackmere, 5th Baron, a brilliant man by all accounts, but reclusive in his later years. Conducted most of his business through correspondence." His mouth twitched in what might have been amusement. "Some say he never aged a day past 35, though that's mere country superstition, of course." "Of course," Eliza echoed, heart racing. "And what became of him, sir?" The solicitor's expression darkened. "A tragic end. His London residence burned to the ground 7 months ago, nothing left but ashes." He eyed her speculatively. "You ask many questions for a servant girl." Eliza lowered her eyes. "Forgive me, sir. I merely find the history of the castle interesting." Hargrove turned away, dismissing her. "Tell Grimshaw I'll take that tea now." Eliza curtsied again and retreated, mind whirling. 7 months ago, just before she had arrived at Blackmere. The timing couldn't be coincidence. Valerian had escaped the fire meant to destroy him, and made his way back to his ancestral home, only to find it occupied by those who might wish him harm. But who and why? The evening meal service kept her busy until well past 9 o'clock. Hargrove and Grimshaw dined together in the small dining room, poring over ledgers and documents between courses. Eliza caught snippets of their conversation as she served, mentions of property sales, mining interests, and timber rights. "The northern tract should fetch a handsome price," Hargrove was saying as she cleared the dessert plates. The timber alone is worth a fortune, and there are rumors of coal deposits. We should move quickly then, Grimshaw replied, refilling his wineglass, before anyone starts asking questions about the Baron's extended absence. Hargrove's eyes flicked meaningfully toward Eliza. Both men fell silent until she left the room. It was nearly midnight before the household settled. Eliza lay on her narrow pallet in the servants' quarters, listening to the soft snores of the other maids. Sleep eluded her, her mind filled with golden eyes and whispered warnings. Trust no one, especially not Grimshaw. What did the steward know? What part had he played in the attempt on Valerian's life, and what of the solicitor? Hargrove managed the estate as if the Baron were truly dead. Was he complicit in the deception, or merely a dupe? When the castle's ancient clock struck 1, Eliza slipped from her bed. She dressed silently in the darkness, wrapping her shawl around her shoulders against the chill. The floors creaked treacherously beneath her feet as she made her way to the kitchen, but the house remained still. In the kitchen, Eliza filled a small basket with what she could find: bread, cheese, a flask of water, and an earthenware pot of beef broth kept warm at the back of the stove. She added clean linen for bandages, then hesitated, eyeing the kitchen knife block. After a moment's consideration, she selected a small paring knife and tucked it into her pocket. The cellar key posed a greater challenge. Master Grimshaw kept the ring at his belt during the day, but at night, where did he store it? Eliza bit her lip, considering. The steward's quarters were on the first floor, near the study. She would have to risk searching there. Heart thundering in her chest, Eliza crept up the servants' stairs and into the main corridor. Moonlight filtered through the tall windows, casting elongated shadows across the flagstone floor. Grimshaw's door loomed before her, solid oak with iron hinges that she prayed wouldn't creak. She placed her ear against the wood, listening for the sound of the steward's distinctive snore. Nothing. Perhaps he slept silently, or perhaps, "Looking for something, girl?" Eliza whirled, stifling a scream. Mr. Hargrove stood in the shadow of a decorative suit of armor, his spectacles gleaming in the moonlight. He held a candle, its flame illuminating his gaunt features from below, giving him a ghoulish appearance. "Sir," Eliza clutched her basket tighter. I was just prowling about well past the servants' curfew," Hargrove finished for her, "with a basket of provisions, no less." His eyes narrowed. "Who are you meeting, girl? Some local swain? Or perhaps something more sinister?" "No, sir. Nothing like that," Eliza stammered. "I merely couldn't sleep and thought a walk might tire me. The basket is for herbs. I sometimes collect them by moonlight for medicinal purposes." Herbs. Hargrove's tone made it clear he didn't believe her. "At 1 in the morning, in October." He gestured with the candle. "Show me what's in the basket." Eliza's mind raced. If Hargrove discovered her true purpose, what would become of Valerian? What would become of her? Before she could respond, a door opened further down the corridor, and Master Grimshaw emerged, tying the belt of his dressing gown. "What's all this?" he demanded, his jowls quivering with irritation. "Winters? What are you doing out of bed?" Trapped between them, Eliza's chances of reaching the cellar undetected evaporated. She needed a diversion, something to distract both men long enough for her to slip away. As if in answer to her unspoken prayer, a tremendous crash echoed from downstairs, followed by the sound of breaking glass. "What the devil?" Grimshaw exclaimed. "Intruders," Hargrove hissed, his face paling. "The silver—" Both men rushed toward the stairs, Hargrove clutching his candle, Grimshaw hastily securing his dressing gown. Neither spared Eliza a backward glance. She didn't waste the opportunity. As soon as they disappeared down the staircase, she darted in the opposite direction toward the servants' stairs that would take her to the kitchens and, beyond them, the cellar. The commotion continued below. Shouts, more breaking glass, and the unmistakable yowl of Mrs. Beck's tomcat. Whatever had caused the disturbance, Eliza silently blessed it. She reached the kitchen, now dark and deserted, and fumbled her way to the cellar door. Without the key, she would have to find another way in. The ancient lock might yield to a hairpin, something she had learned from necessity during her father's more desperate periods. To her shock, the cellar door swung open at her touch, unlocked. Unease prickled along her spine. Had someone else visited the cellar after hours? Grimshaw, perhaps, checking on the wine? Or someone with darker purposes? Eliza hesitated only a moment before descending the narrow stairs, one hand trailing along the damp stone wall for balance. At the bottom, she paused to light a candle stub from the kitchen, shielding its flame as she made her way through the main wine cellar toward the hidden door. It stood ajar, just as she had left it that morning. Eliza pushed it wider, lifting her candle to illuminate the secret chamber. "Valerian?" she whispered. The sarcophagus lay empty, its stone lid pushed aside. Of the vampire lord there was no sign. Panic seized her. Had he been discovered, captured, or had he simply fled, believing Blackmere lost to him? Movement in the shadows behind her made Eliza spin, nearly dropping her candle. "You came back." Valerian stepped into the circle of light, his golden eyes reflecting the flame like a cat's. He looked markedly improved, his posture straighter, his movements more fluid, though his complexion remained unnaturally pale. Relief flooded through Eliza. "I thought you'd gone. I heard the commotion upstairs and prepared to defend myself if necessary." He gestured to a heavy iron poker he held, its end sharpened to a crude point. "But it seems the household's attention is directed elsewhere. Mrs. Beck's cat, I think," Eliza said with a small smile. "It's knocked something over upstairs, creating a perfect distraction." Her expression grew serious. "I brought you food, human food. I wasn't sure if you could eat it, but—" "It will help," Valerian said, accepting the basket. "Blood sustains me, but ordinary food and drink can provide strength as well." His gaze fell to her bandaged hand. "How are you feeling? No weakness or dizziness?" "I'm well," Eliza assured him. "The cut is already healing." Valerian nodded, setting aside the basket. "We don't have much time. Hargrove is here." "Yes, he and Grimshaw were discussing selling parts of your estate, the northern timber tract, specifically. They spoke as if you were truly dead." A grim smile touched Valerian's lips. "Of course they did. They've planned this for years, waiting for the perfect opportunity to seize my holdings. But why? And who are they working for?" Valerian's expression darkened. "Have you heard of the Order of St. Cyprian?" Eliza shook her head. "A secret society dedicated to the eradication of what they call unnatural beings. Vampires primarily, but any creature they deem an abomination." He ran a hand through his dark hair, a surprisingly human gesture. "They've existed for centuries, always adapting their methods. In this modern age, they operate through proxies, solicitors, bankers, men of business who can legally acquire a vampire's assets once the creature is destroyed. And Hargrove is one of these proxies?" "Hargrove is more than a proxy. He's a senior member of the Order itself, one of their most effective hunters." Valerian's golden eyes fixed on her with unnerving intensity. "The man who set the fire that was meant to destroy me." Eliza's blood ran cold. "But how? Why would such a man become your solicitor? To watch me? To study my habits and vulnerabilities?" Valerian's voice was bitter. "I welcomed him into my home, trusted him with my affairs. When he finally struck, he knew precisely when I would be at my most vulnerable. And Grimshaw, a willing accomplice, promised a share of the spoils. The Order cares nothing for the estate itself, only for the destruction of creatures like me and the acquisition of certain artifacts in my possession." "What artifacts?" Valerian hesitated. "Items of power. Things better left undisturbed." He shook his head. "But they haven't found what they're looking for, or they wouldn't still be here." Eliza tried to make sense of it all. "If Hargrove is truly this hunter you describe, why hasn't he sensed your presence?" You said there were wards protecting you, but surely a man dedicated to destroying your kind would have ways to detect you. The wards are ancient and powerful, created by my ancestors who shared my condition. But they're not infallible. Valerian's expression grew troubled. Hargrove has been methodically searching the castle, room by room. It's only a matter of time before he discovers this chamber. Then you must leave, Eliza urged. Tonight, while they're distracted. Valerian shook his head. I'm still too weak. The silver poison lingers in my system, and without regular feeding, I cannot heal fully. His eyes met hers. Besides, I cannot abandon Blackmere. Not only is it my ancestral home, but it contains secrets that must not fall into the Order's hands. What can I do to help? Eliza asked, surprising herself with her own determination. Valerian studied her thoughtfully. You've already done more than I had any right to ask, but if you're willing, there is something. He moved to the far wall of the chamber, running his fingers along the stone until he found what he sought, a small depression that, when pressed, caused a section of the wall to slide open, revealing a hidden niche. From within, he withdrew a small wooden box, intricately carved with symbols similar to those that adorned the chamber walls. He opened it, revealing a silver key nestled on dark velvet. This opens a compartment in the library, he explained. Behind the third panel to the right of the fireplace, there's a hollow space containing a book bound in red leather. I need that book. What is it? My family's grimoire, a record of spells, rituals, and knowledge accumulated over centuries. In it lies the key to defeating the Order's magic and reclaiming my full strength. He placed the key in her palm, curling her fingers over it. But be warned, Hargrove seeks this above all else. If he suspects you're searching for it, your life will be in danger. Eliza stared at the key in her hand, cool and heavy despite its small size. When should I retrieve it? Tomorrow night. Hargrove always retires early on the second night of his visit. It's your best chance to access the library undetected. His fingers lingered on hers. Eliza, listen carefully. If you're caught, deny all knowledge of me. Claim you found the key and were curious. Better yet, create some story about searching for valuable items to steal. Hargrove might believe a servant's greed, but he would never rest if he suspected my survival. A crash from above, louder than before, made both of them start. That's no cat, Valerian said grimly. Someone's searching the castle systematically. You must go before your absence is noted. Eliza nodded, tucking the key into her pocket alongside the paring knife. I'll return tomorrow night with the book. Be careful, Valerian warned. Hargrove is dangerous, more dangerous than you can imagine. His appearance deceives. Beneath that scholarly exterior lies a killer who has hunted my kind for decades. As if to emphasize his warning, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed from the main cellar. Someone was descending the stairs. Go! Valerian urged, pushing her toward a shadowy corner of the chamber. There's another way out, a passage that leads to the old well house. Follow it, then circle back to the servants' entrance. Hurry! He pressed his hand against another stone, revealing a narrow opening barely wide enough for a person to slip through. Cold, damp air wafted from the darkness beyond. The path is straight, with no branches to confuse you, Valerian whispered. Go now. Eliza hesitated only long enough to press the basket into his hands. Eat. Regain your strength. Then, impulsively, she leaned forward and touched his cheek. Until tomorrow. Before he could respond, she ducked into the passage, which closed silently behind her. Complete darkness enveloped her. The only sound, her own rapid breathing and the faint drip of water somewhere ahead. Behind her, through the thick stone, she heard the muffled sound of the cellar door opening. Heavy footsteps crossed the floor, too heavy to be Hargrove's. Grimshaw, then, or perhaps one of the Order's agents. Eliza pressed forward, one hand on the damp wall to guide her, the other extended before her to detect any obstacles. The passage sloped gently upward, the floor uneven beneath her feet. Twice she nearly stumbled, catching herself against the rough stone. After what seemed an eternity, her outstretched fingers encountered wooden planks rather than stone. She felt along the barrier until she located a simple latch. It yielded with a soft click, and a panel swung outward into the night air. Eliza emerged into a small, roofless structure, the abandoned well house, just as Valerian had said. Moonlight streamed through the collapsed roof, illuminating crumbling stone walls and the gaping mouth of the old well itself. She gave it a wide berth, mindful of the rotting boards that partially covered the opening. Outside, the night was clear and cold, stars glittering above the moor like scattered diamonds. The castle loomed to her right, lights burning in several windows, despite the late hour. The entire household had been roused by the disturbance. As Eliza circled back toward the servants' entrance, keeping to the shadows, a flicker of movement near the stables caught her eye. A figure slipped from the shadows, leading a saddled horse. The moonlight gleamed briefly on spectacles. Hargrove. But he wore riding clothes now, not a dressing gown, and something long and slender was strapped to his back. He mounted with the fluid grace of a much younger man and urged his horse toward the moors, away from the castle and the main road. What business could the solicitor have at such an hour, and in such haste? Eliza's unease deepened as she slipped back into the castle. Whatever Hargrove was planning, she doubted it boded well for Valerian. Tomorrow night suddenly seemed very far away. As she crept up the servants' staircase, Mrs. Beck's voice echoed from the kitchen below. "Missing from the pantry, and I tell you, someone's been at the beef broth. Cook swears she didn't take it. Rats, most likely," came Grimshaw's dismissive reply. "We've had trouble with them before. Set more traps tomorrow, and search the servants' quarters. Make sure nothing's been stolen." Eliza's heart sank. Her theft from the kitchen had been noticed. She would have to be more careful in the future, if there was a future. As she slipped back into her narrow bed, the silver key a hard lump beneath her pillow, Eliza wondered what she had entangled herself in, and whether either of them would survive the coming day. Outside, a cloud passed over the moon, plunging the moors into darkness. In the distance, the solitary figure of Hargrove rode on, carrying with him secrets and purposes that threatened everything Eliza had come to care about. And beneath the ancient stones of Blackmere Castle, a vampire lord waited, his fate now bound inextricably with that of a servant girl who had offered her blood freely, with no knowledge of the storm that simple act would unleash. The following morning dawned grey and sullen, with mist clinging to the moors like a shroud. Eliza moved through her chores mechanically, her mind preoccupied with the silver key hidden in her apron pocket and the mystery of Hargrove's midnight ride. She had barely slept, jolting awake at every creak and groan of the ancient castle. Mrs. Beck seemed determined to make her day especially difficult, assigning her the most arduous tasks: beating carpets, scrubbing the marble floors of the entrance hall, polishing the silver in the dining room. Whether this was punishment for some perceived transgression or merely bad luck, Eliza couldn't tell. But by mid-afternoon, her arms ached and her back throbbed with fatigue. "Mind you don't miss any spots," Mrs. Beck instructed, as Eliza knelt before the massive dining room sideboard, a cloth in one hand and silver polish in the other. "Mr. Hargrove is particular about the silver." Eliza nodded, keeping her head down to hide the flash of understanding in her eyes. Silver. Of course Hargrove would be concerned with the condition of weapons that could harm creatures like Valerian. "Where is Mr. Hargrove?" she asked, striving to sound merely curious. "I haven't seen him today. Out on estate business since dawn," Mrs. Beck replied, frowning at a water spot on a crystal goblet. "Master Grimshaw says he won't return until dinner." Relief coursed through Eliza. Hargrove's absence might make her task tonight easier, or it might mean he was gathering reinforcements for some final assault on the castle. Either way, she needed to retrieve the grimoire as soon as possible. As she polished, Eliza studied the library door, visible across the entrance hall. The room had always been off-limits to servants, except during cleaning hours, which occurred only on Tuesdays under Mrs. Beck's watchful eye. Today was Thursday. She would need another distraction to gain access tonight. Evening arrived with no sign of Hargrove's return. Dinner was a quiet affair, with only Grimshaw at the table. Eliza, serving alongside the other maids, noticed the steward seemed tense, his eyes constantly darting to the windows as darkness fell. "Any word from Mr. Hargrove?" she heard cook ask as she delivered the main course. Grimshaw's mouth tightened. "No." And he was most insistent about returning for dinner. It's not like him to change plans without notice. A frisson of unease ran down Eliza's spine. Had something happened to the solicitor on his mysterious errand? Or was his absence part of some larger scheme? By 10 o'clock, the castle had settled into its nighttime routine. Lamps were extinguished, fires banked, and servants dismissed to their quarters. Eliza lay fully dressed beneath her blankets, listening to the sounds of her roommates preparing for bed. Only when the last candle was snuffed and gentle snores filled the room did she rise, silently retrieving her shoes from beneath her pallet. The servants' staircase was her route of choice, its narrow steps less likely to be monitored than the grand main staircase. But as she reached the ground floor, voices from the kitchen made her freeze. 3 more arrived just after sunset, came Grimshaw's low voice. "Hargrove must have summoned them before he left. They're waiting in the gamekeeper's cottage." "What does it mean?" Mrs. Beck's normally confident tone was edged with fear. "Has he found it, then?" "I don't know, but he was most specific. Secure all entrances, allow no one to leave or enter, and wait for his return, no matter how late." "I don't like it, Mr. Grimshaw. First those noises last night, now strangers on the property. It feels wrong, like the old stories my grandmother told about this place." "Control yourself, woman." Grimshaw's voice hardened. "We're paid to manage the house and keep the staff in line, not indulge in superstitious nonsense. Now check that the scullery door is locked, then get to bed. Tomorrow may prove eventful." Footsteps approached the staircase where Eliza hid. She pressed herself into an alcove, scarcely daring to breathe as Mrs. Beck passed within inches of her hiding place. Only when the housekeeper's footsteps receded up the stairs did Eliza emerge, her heart pounding. 3 more visitors, hidden at the gamekeeper's cottage. Hargrove missing, all entrances secured. Whatever the order of St. Cyprian was planning, it was happening now. She had to reach the library before it was too late. The entrance hall was dark and silent, moonlight filtering through the high windows to cast elongated shadows across the marble floor. Eliza slipped from the shelter of the servants' staircase, keeping close to the wall as she made her way toward the library door. Each footfall, though carefully placed, seemed thunderous in the midnight quiet. The library door was locked, as expected. Eliza removed the silver key from her pocket, but it was clearly too small for this lock. Valerian had mentioned a hidden compartment behind a panel. She would need to gain access to the room first. Casting about for options, her gaze fell on a decorative letter opener displayed on a small table near the entrance. It took only moments to work it into the crack of the door near the lock mechanism. With a soft click, the door swung inward. The library lay in darkness, the only illumination coming from the moonlight streaming through the tall windows. Shelves of books rose from floor to ceiling, their leather spines gleaming dully in the silvery light. A massive desk dominated one end of the room, while a fireplace large enough to stand in anchored the other. Eliza made her way cautiously toward the fireplace, counting the wood panels to the right. 1, 2, 3. The third panel looked no different from the others, its dark wood carved with the same elaborate pattern that adorned the rest of the room. She ran her fingers over its surface, searching for some mechanism or keyhole. There, a small, almost imperceptible depression in one of the carved flowers. Eliza inserted the silver key, turning it gently. The panel swung outward on hidden hinges, revealing a small cavity in the wall. Within lay a single book bound in deep red leather, its cover unmarked by title or author. As Eliza reached for it, a floorboard creaked behind her. "I wondered who he would send for it," said Hargrove's soft, cultured voice. Eliza spun around, clutching the book to her chest. The solicitor stood framed in the library doorway, still dressed in the riding clothes she had seen him in the night before. But something was different about him now, a hardness in his eyes, a stillness in his posture that reminded her uneasily of a predator about to strike. "Mr. Hargrove," she managed, struggling to keep her voice steady. "I was just stealing, evidently." He stepped into the room, closing the door quietly behind him. Though not silver spoons or jewelry, as one might expect from a servant girl with a dissolute father. "No, you're stealing something infinitely more valuable and more dangerous." His gaze fixed on the book in her hands. "Do you even know what you're holding, Miss Winters?" Eliza backed away, feeling the heat of the banked fire against her legs. "Sir, I don't understand." "Oh, I think you do." Hargrove moved further into the room, his steps measured and deliberate. "The question is how much you understand. Did he tell you what he is? What that book contains?" A thin smile curved his lips. "Did he tell you what will happen to you once he's done using you?" "If you mean Lord Blackmere." "Ah." Hargrove's smile widened, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp, too numerous. "So he's revealed himself. How very trusting of him." He reached into his coat, withdrawing what appeared to be a silver letter opener, similar to the one Eliza had used on the door. "And how very unfortunate for you." Eliza's grip tightened on the grimoire. "You tried to kill him. You set the fire in London. I cleansed an abomination from this earth, or so I believed." Hargrove's expression hardened. "A mistake I intend to rectify tonight." "Why?" Eliza demanded, surprising herself with her boldness. "What has he done to deserve destruction? He's the rightful owner of this estate, of all you've been stealing in his absence." Hargrove laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Rightful owner? He's a parasite, girl. A blood-drinking monster who has extended his unnatural life for centuries by feeding on innocents like you." He gestured with the silver letter opener. "Did he tell you how he became what he is? How many he's killed over his long, cursed existence?" Doubt flickered through Eliza's mind. She knew so little about Valerian, had accepted his story without question. What if Hargrove was right? "I see the uncertainty in your eyes," Hargrove said, his voice softening. "It's not too late for you, Eliza. Give me the book, tell me where he's hiding, and I'll ensure no harm comes to you. You're a victim in this, manipulated by a creature that excels at deception." For a moment, Eliza wavered. Then she remembered Valerian's eyes when he spoke of his home, the gentle touch of his lips against her palm, the bond she had felt forming between them. "No," she said firmly. "I don't believe you." Hargrove sighed, his expression almost regretful. "Then I'm afraid you leave me no choice." He raised the silver implement, which Eliza now saw was no letter opener, but a thin, deadly stiletto. "The book, if you please." "I won't ask again." Eliza's mind raced. The only exit was the door behind Hargrove. She had no weapons save the heavy book in her hands, but perhaps... She lunged to her right, toward the fireplace poker. Hargrove anticipated the move, cutting her off with alarming speed. His hand shot out, gripping her wrist with bruising force. "Foolish girl," he hissed, his breath hot against her face. "Do you think you're the first to be seduced by his kind, the first to defend a monster out of misplaced loyalty?" He twisted her arm, forcing her to her knees. Pain shot through Eliza's shoulder as the grimoire tumbled from her grasp, landing with a dull thud on the hearth. "I've hunted his bloodline for 30 years. Hargrove continued, retrieving the book without releasing his grip on her. "Destroyed his sire, his siblings, every foul creature spawned from the same dark ritual. He is the last, and tonight the Blackmere curse ends forever." "You're wrong about him," Eliza gasped through the pain. Hargrove's eyes narrowed. Am I? Did he tell you about the villagers who disappeared over the centuries? The servants who entered Blackmere Castle and were never seen again? The young women found bloodless in the moors, their throats torn open? Lies, Eliza insisted, though uncertainty gnawed at her. Truth, Hargrove countered. Truth I've documented meticulously in the Order's archives. Truth written in the blood of hundreds of victims. He released her suddenly, shoving her away. But no matter. You'll see for yourself soon enough, when hunger overcomes whatever affection he's feigned for you. Eliza stumbled backward, rubbing her bruised wrist. What do you mean? I mean, my dear, that you're going to lead me to him. Hargrove tucked the grimoire into his coat and withdrew a small silver whistle. And my associates are going to ensure he has nowhere to run this time. Before Eliza could respond, the library door burst open. Grimshaw stood in the doorway, a shotgun cradled in his arms. The cellar's been breached, he reported tersely. Signs of recent habitation in the old storage chamber. Hargrove's expression tightened. He's still here, then? Wounded, hiding like the vermin he is. He turned back to Eliza, eyes cold. Where, girl? Where is he now? I don't know what you're talking about, Eliza replied, forcing defiance into her voice. Search her, Hargrove ordered. Grimshaw set aside his shotgun and roughly patted Eliza down, discovering the small paring knife in her pocket. Planning to defend yourself, were you? Hargrove asked, examining the blade. Or perhaps deliver a message written in blood? His gaze sharpened. Show me your hands. Reluctantly, Eliza extended her hands. Hargrove grabbed her left one, tearing away the makeshift bandage to reveal the healing cut across her palm. Blood freely given, he murmured, understanding dawning in his eyes. You've bonded with him. His grip tightened painfully. Do you have any idea what you've done? The connection you've established? Let go of me, Eliza demanded, trying to pull free. Hargrove ignored her struggles. Grimshaw, fetch the others. Search every inch of this castle, starting with the cellars. He pulled Eliza closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. As for you, my dear, you're going to be our guest of honor at tonight's cleansing. A sudden crash from outside the library interrupted whatever Hargrove planned to say next. Shouts echoed from the entrance hall, followed by the unmistakable sound of breaking glass. Grimshaw snatched up his shotgun, moving cautiously toward the door. Sir, I think... The rest of his sentence was lost as the library windows imploded, showering the room with glass. A dark shape hurtled through the opening, moving with inhuman speed. One moment Grimshaw stood by the door, shotgun raised. The next, he was flying across the room, crashing into a bookshelf with bone-breaking force. Valerian Blackmere stood in the center of the library, golden eyes blazing in the darkness, fangs fully extended. Gone was the weakened figure from the cellar. In his place stood a predator in his prime, radiating power and rage. "Release her," he commanded, his voice resonating with unnatural authority. Hargrove pushed Eliza roughly aside, drawing his silver stiletto. So the monster emerges from his lair at last. His free hand reached into his coat, withdrawing a small glass vial filled with clear liquid. "Come to die properly this time, Blackmere?" Valerian's eyes flickered to Eliza. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, scrambling away from Hargrove. "He has the grimoire." "That's the least of his concerns now," Hargrove interjected. "My men are throughout the castle. Every exit is covered. There will be no escape this time." He uncorked the vial with his teeth. "Holy water, blessed by the Patriarch of Constantinople himself. One drop will scar your flesh forever. Imagine what the entire vial will do." Valerian's expression remained impassive. "You've studied our kind for decades, Hargrove, yet you understand so little." His gaze shifted to the grimoire visible in the solicitor's coat. "Did you really believe I'd leave my family's most precious possession unguarded all these years? That book has been waiting for you, waiting for the moment you'd reveal yourself fully." Uncertainty flickered across Hargrove's face. "What nonsense is this?" "Open it," Valerian suggested, his voice deceptively soft. See for yourself what you've captured. Despite himself, Hargrove glanced down at the book tucked in his coat. That momentary distraction was all Valerian needed. He moved with blinding speed, closing the distance between them in a heartbeat. Hargrove reacted quickly, flinging the vial of holy water at the vampire's face. Valerian caught it in mid-air, his reflexes far sharper than when Eliza had first found him. "As I said," he murmured, "you understand so little." With a casual flick, he sent the vial flying back at Hargrove. It shattered against the solicitor's chest, soaking his shirt. Hargrove stared down in shock, then began to scream as the liquid burned through fabric and flesh alike. "Impossible!" he shrieked, clawing at his chest. "It's holy water. It should have no effect on a human." "Should it not?" Valerian's smile was terrible to behold. "Perhaps you're not as human as you believe, Hunter. Perhaps those who hunt monsters too long become what they despise." Hargrove fell to his knees, the grimoire tumbling from his coat. Eliza retrieved it quickly, backing away from the writhing solicitor. The red leather felt warm beneath her fingers, almost alive. "Eliza," Valerian called, his voice urgent. "Come to me, now." She hesitated only a moment before rushing to his side. Valerian wrapped a protective arm around her, his body surprisingly warm. "We need to leave," he said quietly. "His reinforcements will be here any moment. But the castle, your home, can be reclaimed another day." His golden eyes met hers. "Some things are more valuable than property." A thunderous pounding on the library door punctuated his words. Wood splintered as someone threw their weight against it. "The passage in the cellar," Eliza suggested. "The one I used last night." "Will be watched," Valerian finished grimly. "They're not fools." He glanced at the shattered window. "The moors are our best chance. I know these lands better than any hunter." The library door gave way with a crash. 3 men burst into the room, each carrying what appeared to be modified crossbows. Behind them, Grimshaw struggled to his feet, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead. "There!" he shouted, pointing toward Valerian and Eliza. Valerian moved with preternatural speed, sweeping Eliza into his arms. "Hold tight to me," he commanded, "and whatever happens, don't let go of that book." Before she could respond, he launched them both through the shattered window. Eliza had a brief, terrifying sensation of falling. Then they hit the ground with far less impact than she expected, Valerian absorbing most of the shock. "Run," he urged, setting her on her feet, toward the old standing stones. "I'll be right behind you." Eliza ran, clutching the grimoire to her chest, the cool night air burning in her lungs. Behind her came shouts and the distinctive twang of crossbows being fired. She risked a glance back to see Valerian moving in an erratic pattern, drawing their fire as he followed. The mist had returned, shrouding the moors in ghostly white tendrils. It thickened as they fled, offering welcome concealment from their pursuers. But it also obscured the treacherous terrain, patches of bog and hidden gullies that could trap the unwary. "This way," Valerian called softly, appearing at her side. He took her elbow, guiding her on a seemingly random path through the mist. "There's a place ahead where we can shelter, an old burial cairn our pursuers won't dare enter." "Why not?" Eliza gasped, struggling to keep pace. Valerian's smile gleamed in the darkness. "Because of the guardian I placed there 3 centuries ago." They crested a small rise, and Eliza saw them, ancient standing stones arranged in a circle around a mound of earth and smaller rocks. Even in the moonlight, there was something forbidding about the place, a palpable aura of age and power that made her steps falter. "What's in there?" she whispered. Valerian's expression grew solemn. "Safety, I hope, and answers." He nodded toward the grimoire she still clutched, "including the truth about that book and why Hargrove was willing to kill for it." A shout from behind them, closer than expected, spurred them forward. As they approached the standing stones, the mist parted, revealing a dark opening in the side of the mound, a low, stone-lined passage leading into the earth itself. Valerian ducked inside, pulling Eliza after him. The passage was so narrow they had to proceed in single file, bent almost double. The air grew colder, heavy with the scent of damp earth and something older, something that reminded Eliza of the hidden chamber beneath Blackmere. The passage opened suddenly into a circular chamber, its walls lined with stones, fitted so precisely no mortar was needed. Moonlight filtered through a small opening in the center of the domed ceiling, illuminating a stone altar in the middle of the room. Upon the altar lay a skeleton, its bones arranged with careful precision. What caught Eliza's attention, however, was the silver circlet still adorning the skull, set with a single blood-red stone that seemed to absorb the moonlight rather than reflect it. "Valerian," she whispered, her voice echoing strangely in the ancient space. "What is this place? Who is that?" "That," Valerian replied softly, "is my mother, the last true lady of Blackmere, and the author of the book you're holding." Outside, the hunters' voices drew nearer, flashlight beams cutting through the mist as they approached the standing stones. Eliza clutched the grimoire tighter, feeling its warmth pulsing against her chest like a second heartbeat. "Place the book on the altar," Valerian instructed, his golden eyes reflecting the moonbeam that fell from above. "It's time you learned the truth about the Blackmere legacy and why Hargrove was willing to burn the world to destroy it." As Eliza stepped forward, the red stone in the silver circlet suddenly flared to life, bathing the chamber in crimson light. The skeleton's bony fingers twitched, then curled inward, as if beckoning her closer. Eliza froze mid-step, unable to tear her gaze from the skeleton's moving fingers. A soft, sibilant whisper filled the chamber, though the skull's jaw remained motionless. "Blood of my blood returns," the voice murmured, seeming to emanate from the walls themselves. "And she brings the crimson tome." Valerian placed a steadying hand on Eliza's shoulder. "She won't harm you," he assured her. "My mother's spirit protects this place and those I bring into it." Still trembling, Eliza approached the altar and gently placed the red leather grimoire beside the skeleton. As soon as the book touched the stone, the crimson gem in the silver circlet pulsed brighter, and the pages of the grimoire began to turn of their own accord, fluttering like the wings of a trapped bird until they settled near the center. "It's not in any language I recognize," Eliza said, staring at the flowing script that covered the pages. "It's the old tongue," Valerian explained, moving to stand beside her. "The language of my mother's people before they came to these shores." His finger traced a line of text without touching the page. "This passage speaks of the covenant, the pact that created the first of my kind." The whisper returned, stronger now. "Tell her, my son. Tell her everything. The hunters draw near, and choices must be made." Outside, voices called to each other, their owners growing bolder as they approached the standing stones. A beam of light briefly illuminated the entrance to the burial mound. "Quickly," Valerian said, taking Eliza's hands in his. "What do you know of vampires?" "Only stories," she admitted. "Undead creatures who drink blood, fear sunlight and religious symbols, and can be killed by a stake through the heart." A hint of amusement flickered across Valerian's face. "Some of that is true, but much is the invention of frightened minds. My kind are not undead. We were never human to begin with." Eliza's brow furrowed. "But you look human. You speak of your mother as if—" "My mother was human," Valerian interrupted gently. "My father was not. The Blackmere line began when a creature of the old world, what you might call a fairy or spirit, fell in love with a mortal woman. Their union produced children with traits of both worlds, the longevity and powers of the father's kind, the compassion and adaptability of the mother's. Then the blood drinking, the vulnerability to silver, the price of our dual nature," Valerian explained. "We require blood to maintain our powers and extend our lives, but we need not kill to obtain it. As for silver, it is the metal of the moon, and the old ones were creatures of darkness. Their weaknesses became ours." Eliza glanced at the grimoire, its pages still open to the mysterious text. And this? What does Hargrove want with it? The grimoire contains secrets that have been kept for centuries, rituals that can strengthen or weaken the boundaries between worlds. Valerian's expression darkened. The Order believes all such boundaries should be sealed forever, keeping the mortal world pure of otherworldly influence. But there are older powers that disagree. A commotion outside interrupted them, raised voices and the sound of struggle. "They're afraid to enter," Valerian observed. "The standing stones repel those who bear ill will toward the old ways, but they won't be deterred for long." "What do we do?" Eliza asked. The whisper returned, urgent now. "The ritual, my son. It is time." Valerian nodded, his golden eyes meeting Eliza's. "There is a way to end this, to protect both the grimoire and ourselves. But it requires a sacrifice." Eliza's heart hammered in her chest. "What kind of sacrifice?" "Not blood or life," Valerian assured her quickly, "but perhaps something equally precious, choice." He gestured toward the grimoire. "The book contains a bonding ritual, one that would link us permanently, more than marriage, more than any human connection. Our minds, our souls, our very essence would be joined." "Like when I gave you my blood?" Eliza asked. "That created a temporary connection. This would be eternal." His voice softened. "It would also transform you gradually. You would become like me, not fully vampire, but no longer fully human either." The implications staggered Eliza. Immortality, power, an existence outside the human world she had always known, and a bond with this mysterious man who had already claimed a piece of her heart. "Why would you offer this to me?" she whispered. "You barely know me." A gentle smile touched Valerian's lips. "I know you showed compassion when you could have shown fear, courage when you could have fled, loyalty when you could have betrayed." His hand brushed her cheek. "In 6 centuries, I have rarely encountered such qualities." The whisper came again, more insistent. "Decide quickly, child of Adam." The hunters gather their resolve. As if to emphasize the warning, a gunshot rang out, followed by the sound of splintering stone. Someone was firing at the entrance to the burial mound. "They're using silver bullets," Valerian said grimly. "They mean to flush us out or kill us where we stand." Eliza's mind raced. The life she had known was already lost to her. Return to Blackmere was impossible now that she had been branded Valerian's accomplice. And what waited for her in the world beyond? More servitude, more struggle, a brief, unremarkable existence before returning to the dust? Or she could choose this, an extraordinary life, bound to an extraordinary being. Adventure, discovery, and perhaps even love stretching before her into centuries unknown. "If we complete this ritual," she asked, "what happens to Hargrove and the Order?" "They lose their power over me," Valerian replied. "The bonding strengthens both participants. Together, we would be more than either of us alone, strong enough to reclaim Blackmere and protect the secrets it contains." Another shot rang out, closer this time. Dirt trickled from the ceiling as the structure shuddered. "I'll do it," Eliza decided, her voice steadier than she felt. "I choose you, Valerian. I choose this path." The skeleton's fingers curled tighter, and the whisper rose to a sibilant hum of approval. The pages of the grimoire turned once more, revealing an illuminated illustration of a man and woman standing within a circle of ancient runes, their hands clasped over a burning flame. "The ritual requires 3 elements," Valerian explained quickly. "Blood freely given, which we have already shared. Words of binding, which I will teach you. And finally, the blessing of one who has crossed between worlds." He gestured toward his mother's remains. "She has waited centuries for this moment, for me to find a worthy companion to share eternity." The red stone in the silver circlet pulsed in agreement, its light washing over them in crimson waves. Valerian took Eliza's hands and positioned them over the grimoire. "Repeat after me," he instructed, then began to speak in that strange, flowing language she had noticed in the book. Eliza did her best to mimic the sounds, feeling the words resonate deep within her chest, as if they awakened something long dormant. As she spoke, the air in the chamber grew thick and charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. "Now we seal the bond," Valerian said when they had finished the recitation. From his pocket, he withdrew a small silver knife, similar to Hargrove's but more ancient, its handle wrapped in leather darkened by centuries of handling. With a quick motion, he drew the blade across his palm, then offered the knife to Eliza. She took it without hesitation and opened her previous wound, the pain barely registering through the strange euphoria that had begun to build within her. They clasped their bleeding hands together over the grimoire. Where their blood mingled and dripped onto the pages, the ink seemed to ripple and reform, the words changing before Eliza's eyes into English. "I am yours," Valerian said, his golden eyes luminous in the crimson light. "And you are mine, from this moment unto eternity." "I am yours," Eliza echoed, feeling the truth of it in her very bones. "And you are mine, from this moment unto eternity." The whisper rose to a keening cry of triumph as the red stone in the circlet suddenly shattered, releasing a flood of crimson energy that engulfed them both. Eliza gasped as it poured into her, filling every cell with liquid fire. She could feel her awareness expanding, her senses sharpening. Valerian's presence in her mind blossomed from a whisper to a song, his thoughts and memories flowing into hers like tributaries joining a river. And with them came understanding of who he truly was, of the centuries he had witnessed, of the losses and joys he had experienced. She saw Blackmere Castle as it had been in its glory days, saw Valerian's mother practicing her ancient arts in secret chambers, saw the first time the Order had come hunting, nearly 200 years ago. "They're breaking through!" Valerian's voice pulled her back to the present. The entrance to the burial mound was crumbling, chunks of stone falling away as the hunters attacked it with tools and weapons. But Eliza was no longer afraid. She could feel new strength flowing through her limbs, new awareness of the world around her. And most intriguingly, she could sense the earth beneath them, feel the roots and tunnels that honeycomb the ancient moor. "There's another way out," she said with certainty, pointing to a section of wall behind the altar. "Behind that stone." Valerian looked at her in wonder. "How did you know?" "I can feel it," Eliza replied, marveling at her own certainty. "Just as I can feel the hunters' fear despite their bravado. Just as I can feel the grimoire's satisfaction that its purpose has been fulfilled. Indeed, the book had closed itself, and now lay quiescent on the altar, its red leather binding faded to the color of old brick. The skeleton's fingers had relaxed, once more appearing as they had for centuries, simply bones, with no hint of the spirit that had animated them moments before. Valerian quickly moved to the wall section Eliza had indicated, and pressed his hands against it. With a grinding noise, the stone swung inward, revealing a low tunnel sloping gently upward. "This will lead us to the far side of the moor," he said, retrieving the grimoire and tucking it securely inside his coat. "Beyond the Order's cordon." A final gunshot rang out, and daylight suddenly streamed into the chamber as the entrance collapsed entirely. Hargrove stood silhouetted against the dawn sky, his face contorted with rage and pain from his burns. Behind him, several men aimed crossbows into the burial mound. "Nowhere left to run, monster," Hargrove snarled, "and your pet servant can die with you." Valerian stepped protectively in front of Eliza, but she gently moved him aside. The sunlight streaming into the chamber didn't burn him, as legend suggested it should. Another misconception, she now understood through their bond, but it did weaken him slightly, making his reactions slower. "I am no servant," Eliza declared, her voice carrying new authority that made even Hargrove pause. "I am the Lady of Blackmere, and you are trespassing on sacred ground." The red stone's power still flowed through her, visible to the hunters as a crimson aura surrounding her slender form. Several of them stepped back, muttering prayers or superstitious phrases. Hargrove stood his ground, though his confidence seemed shaken. "What have you done, girl? What has he made you?" "He has made me nothing," Eliza replied. "I have chosen my own path, as the First Lady of Blackmere chose hers centuries ago." She extended her hand, fingers spread, and felt power gathering in her palm like heat above a flame. "Now leave this place while you still can." "Kill them both," Hargrove commanded, raising his silver stiletto. The men hesitated, unnerved by Eliza's transformation. One finally raised his crossbow and fired, but the bolt stopped mid-air before her outstretched hand, hanging motionless for a moment before dropping harmlessly to the ground. Valerian smiled grimly. "You should have heeded her warning, Hargrove. The old powers wake in her, and they remember the Order's persecution." With a cry of frustration, Hargrove lunged forward, stiletto aimed at Valerian's heart. But Eliza was faster. She swept her hand in an arc, and a wave of crimson energy knocked the solicitor backward, sending him tumbling among his men. "This ends now," she declared. "Blackmere Castle and all its lands return to their rightful lord. You will leave this place and never return. This I decree as the new Lady of Blackmere." As she spoke, the ground beneath the hunter's feet began to tremble. Roots burst from the earth, writhing like serpents as they wrapped around the men's ankles. Those who had entered the circle of standing stones found themselves truly trapped, the ancient guardians of the site awakening to Eliza's call. Only Hargrove remained defiant, struggling against the roots that sought to bind him. "This isn't over, abomination. The Order has hunted your kind for millennia. We will never stop." "Perhaps not," Valerian conceded, moving to stand beside Eliza. "But you will no longer hunt us." He placed his hand on Eliza's shoulder, and she felt his power joining with hers, amplifying the connection she had formed with the land. "In fact, I don't think you'll be hunting anyone ever again." Together, they raised their hands, directing the combined energy toward Hargrove. The solicitor screamed as the crimson light engulfed him, his body contorting as some fundamental change overtook him. When the light faded, he fell to his knees, gasping. "What? What have you done to me?" he wheezed, clutching his chest. "I've taken your hatred," Valerian explained dispassionately, "the burning obsession that has driven you all these years. You'll find vampire hunting holds little interest for you now." Hargrove stared at his hands in horror, as if seeing them for the first time. "I feel nothing. Empty." "Not empty," Eliza corrected gently. "Unburdened. Free to become something other than a hunter of shadows." She gestured toward the moor, stretching before them. "Go. Live whatever life remains to you. But know that Blackmere is forever closed to you and your order." The other men, released from the binding roots, backed away in superstitious dread. Two helped Hargrove to his feet, his expression vacant and confused as they led him away from the standing stones. When they had disappeared into the mist that still clung to the lower reaches of the moor, Eliza turned to Valerian, suddenly overwhelmed by all that had transpired. "What happens now?" she asked. Valerian's golden eyes were warm as he took her hands in his. "Now we go home. We reclaim Blackmere Castle and restore it to its former glory." A smile touched his lips. "And then, my lady, we have eternity to explore." Through their bond, Eliza felt the truth of his words and something more, a deep affection that had taken root the moment she had offered her blood freely, now blossoming into something that might, given time, become love. "Eternity," she echoed, savoring the word. "It sounds rather daunting." "It would be alone," Valerian agreed, "but together I think we shall find it an adventure worth having." As the sun climbed higher, they made their way through the hidden tunnel, emerging on the far side of the moor. In the distance, Blackmere Castle stood silhouetted against the morning sky, its granite walls glowing golden in the autumn light. No longer a prison to Eliza, but a sanctuary. No longer a stronghold of secrets, but a home waiting to be reclaimed. Hand in hand, the vampire lord and his newly bonded lady walked toward their future, the Crimson Tome, secure between them, and the whisper of ancient powers rustling through the heather beneath their feet. Behind them, the standing stones resumed their silent vigil, guardians of a threshold now crossed, witnesses to a union that would endure long after their weathered surfaces had crumbled to dust. And in the gentle breeze that followed them across the moor, one might almost hear a mother's approving whisper, "Blood of my blood continues. The Blackmere legacy endures."